Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone here, and those of you on Zoom. We are getting ready to get started. The board meeting this evening, Mr. Doherty is going to be a few minutes late, so we're going to go ahead and start, and we'll mark him present when he comes in. And so I am going to call the meeting to order and ask Mr. Giuffre for a roll call. Here. 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 And we, as I said, we will mark Mr. Doherty present when he arrives. The first item is the adoption of the agenda. Board members, you will note that you have a paper agenda in front of you. You should note that with the exception of a few personnel items that were added in, and they're in yellow in board docs, the agenda is as you received it before the meeting. So is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Dr. Switch now moved. Is there a second? Ms. Pettit seconded. Any questions or discussion? Mr. Giuffre, can we vote on that?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Motion carried. The first thing we're going to do this evening is welcoming of guests, and I did welcome you all here, our audience members, but we're going to do it a little bit differently this evening as well. Mr. Carlier, I'm going to ask you to start first. We have some new employees of the district here, and so if you'd like to introduce those.
Thank you, Dr. Lorenz. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome all of our new staff that we have for the 2021-2022 school year. And at our opening day ceremony, of course, with all of the staff, we were able to welcome them, but we invited them to the Board of Education meeting tonight so we can give them a proper welcome to our district. So I'm going to ask for the individuals who are our new staff and are able to be here tonight. I'm going to call their names, and if I could have them stand, and then once the list is finished, we will give them a nice Loveland welcome. Amy Arliello, Abigail Bromley, Michaela Gibbs, Elizabeth Haas, Shane Hayes, Peyton LaFond, Kimberly Lewis, Adam Reed, Katie Sutton, Katie Swain, Aaron Williams, Anna Kavanaugh, Bren Cole, Amanda Robinson, Julia Hopkins, Joshua Sears, Jennifer Van Rokel, Meredith Waterworth, Griffin Williams, April Krapansky, Katie McMahon, Barbara Mullenkamp, and Heidi Timming. Congratulations to you guys. Welcome to Loveland City Schools. And on behalf of the entire district and the board, I welcome you to Loveland City Schools. I'm sure all of you have had a fierce start to the school year. You probably haven't had a chance to really even catch your breath yet. We are very excited for you guys to be here, and we appreciate you coming tonight. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Lorenz.
Thank you. We appreciate you being here. We are sorry that it's in this kind of setup and not the usual kind of thing where we can have everybody here and we can all get to meet everybody. But we're very glad you're here. Very glad you're here in the district. Very glad you're here this evening, and we do welcome you. We're going to ask you to stay for just a couple of moments. We're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance in just a couple of moments, and then we're not going to ask you to stay for the whole meeting unless you really want to. I'm suspecting that you might have things that you want to do before school starts tomorrow, and so no one will be watching if you slip out of the meeting in a few minutes. I'm now going to ask Mrs. Washburn if she will introduce two other guests who are here this evening, and we will be voting on them later in the meeting.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Lorenz. So this evening joining us, we have our two student representatives to the board, and they will be reporting on different things going on within all of the schools, as well as trying to be a voice for all of the students in the district. So over on this side here, we have Austin Smith joining us with his mom. And Austin is quite involved. I'm sure I'm going to miss some things, is involved in student council, the student athlete leadership team, soccer, tennis, cross country. And now he is our junior student representative. And yeah, thank you, Austin. Over on this side of the room, I feel like you're in opposing corners here. We have our returning, now senior, Nicole Pedicini. And Nicole is quite involved as well. And she is in Hope Squad, Student Council, the Women in Science and Engineering, Loveland High School Cheer Camp Project Manager. And this will be her second year as a student representative to the board. And she and Austin will hopefully get to know each other and work together. And we thank you guys very much for your time and for your desire to do this.
Welcome, Austin and Nicole. And I'll ask you the same thing, if you would not mind staying for the Pledge of Allegiance. And as I said, we'll be voting on your acceptance later. And then we'll have a place for you at the table when we get everything organized for meetings for the next time you are here. And we do welcome your parents here this evening as well. We're glad to see the support that you have. So thank you very much for being here. And I will now and join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. You'll notice something, board members, you'll notice something a little different about the agenda this evening. The first three items that are on the agenda are to approve minutes. And I believe this is a way our agenda used to be in the past. And so we have moved them up to the beginning. No big reason for that, except that they're board minutes. And so we'll put them at the beginning where we will approve them. And so I would go ahead and make a motion that this board approve item 1.4, 1.5, and 1.6, the minutes of June 29th, 2021, the minutes of 8/10, 2021, and the minutes of 8/20, 21. So I'll make that motion. Is there a second? Mrs. Washburn seconded. I will simply make a note of the fact that in the August 20th meeting, there's something that appears in the minutes that's slightly different than the recording of the meeting. Within my report, we talked about reading items, or maybe it's in the August 10th. Anyway, within my report, we talked about reading something, and then we voted to read them. And the vote shows outside of my report, but that was so it would not interrupt the flow of the report that was printed there. So that's the only glitch that I saw in the minutes, and that's the way it should be, just to read the way it happened. Are there any questions, discussion, any concerns with the minutes? Seeing none, can we vote on them, Mr. Giuffre?
Dr. Lorenz.
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn.
Yes.
I'll be abstaining.
Yes.
And I believe if board members are at all concerned about Mr. Doherty's abstention, Mr. Doherty had a family issue and was not able to spend quite as much time reading minutes for this meeting as he normally does, so he didn't feel comfortable approving them. Is that correct, Mr. Doherty?
That's exactly right. I'm not voicing an objection to the minutes. I don't approve them unless I've read them, and I haven't had time to read them. So that's the reason I'm abstaining.
Thank you very much. All right, the next item on our agenda is hearing of the public. And this is a normal part of our regular business meeting. And we do welcome comments. Anyone who is here who wishes to comment should fill out a public participation request. I believe several people already have. And then you will give that to the treasurer if you have not done so already. And I will simply read the note at the bottom of the form, which says, in order for the board to fulfill its obligation to complete the planned agenda in an effective and efficient fashion, a maximum of 30 minutes of public participation is permitted at each meeting. In addition, our policy states that anyone participating will have 3 minutes to address the board, and then will not be permitted to address the board again until everyone who has asked to speak will have had the time to speak up until we get to the 30 minutes of speaking. Mr. Giuffre, how many folks do you have who signed in?
Currently, we have 6.
Okay. And so I think at 3 minutes each, I see some. So at 3 minutes each, I think that we can fit 10 people in there, if my math is correct. And so I will ask you to call out those names as they come up. I will ask the folks to come up to this computer. Mr. Ames, perhaps you'll help them know how to, I think they just need to use that microphone there, is that correct? So that they can be a part of our Zoom meeting. And I've got us starting at, my computer says 6:16 to start our public participation. Mr. Giuffre, who would go first?
Ms. Kelly Lip.
Kelly Lip?
You would think, right? It's actually John Lynn. Oh, you left. You were right. That will be.
Okay. Can I pull this down? Are we fine?
Should be good.
Great. Hello, thank you for having me able to speak today. My name's Kelly Lip. Our 2 oldest children graduated from Lelvin High School in 2016 and 2019. My youngest is a junior at Lelvin High School. It seems that one small group of people are really the source of your decisions for this school year. That is your panel of experts made up of board-selected individuals. There have been many experts that have shared their expertise and opinions since the beginning of the COVID crisis that began last year. I'm sure you've heard many of these expert opinions in your email feedback from parents, but if I may just mention a few of them. On the subject of the importance of mask wearing, the CDC and/or Dr. Fauci has said the following. In November of 2004, the CDC published guidance in response to questions about the role of masks for controlling influenza. They concluded that no recommendation can be made at this time for mask use in the community by asymptomatic persons. In April of 2009, the CDC issued recommendations for the use of face masks and respirators in the case where H1N1 swine flu had been detected. Face coverings should only be used when caring for sick individuals or in other specific circumstances. They added that relying on masks for protection in crowded settings is ill-advised. February of 2020, Dr. Fauci advises against mask wearing. The typical mask you buy in the drugstore is not really effective in keeping out the virus, said Dr. Fauci. July of 2021, kind of a little bit more current, Dr. Fauci states that the broad overall CDC recommendation is that if you're vaccinated, you're protected and you do not need to wear a mask indoor or outdoors. I did not list all the many other dates where they were back and forth on the mask recommendation since 2020, but you get my point. On the reliability of COVID testing, the FDA announced the week of July 25th, 2021, that the PCR test has failed its full review and will have its emergency use authorization revoked. It will be withdrawn for emergency use by the end of 2021. The exact date, I believe, is December 31st, 2021 for the PCR test to be removed. This means that the tests that we are currently using to identify positive cases is not reliable. Excuse me. Yet this is the test that we're using as a basis for contact tracing, quarantining, and masking. The Ohio Department of Health has released all of their K through 12 COVID-19 mandates. There are no public health orders in place at this time ordering any school district to mandate mass quarantining or contact tracing. Do not allow our school community to follow the ridiculous quarantining rules, which will lead to the shutdown of all our buildings while our perfectly healthy children languish at home. Just as a last comment, thank you. I know I went over my time. This is kind of an add-on. As I was watching the board on the introductory section, one board member in particular, I just watched one, but I noticed several of you were touching your face. Since my 24-year-old was 3 years old, I always told him, keep your hands below your neck, because that's the best way to keep yourself healthy. One of the masked board members touched their face 25 times in 10 minutes. I wonder how our kindergartners will do with their masks. That's the end.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board. Thank you very much for your time this evening. I'm here to address the ongoing debate about masking. And I'll preface this by saying that I had an excellent conversation with Mr. Broadwater today. I understand that his end goal and the end goal of the board is to keep kids in school and in person, and all decisions are being made with that end goal. And I certainly support that end goal. I understand that you have received communications from parents on both sides of the issue. I myself had sent a lengthy scientifically researched paper on May 18th demonstrating the inefficacy of masks and dangers of prolonged mask wearing. I'm aware that you have also received data and research that shows the converse is true, as evidenced by the thick stack of papers that Mr. Doherty had brought in. I know you've received an influx of multiple things. And I do really appreciate, and I know you're sincere when you said you read through everything. So thank you. Thank you very much for that. I can understand the difficult position that you are in with both sides feeling so passionately about this issue and conflicting data reports. I hope we can all agree that no matter where we stand on this issue, we all want what is best for our children. I have many articles that I can reference, statements from doctors and studies that show the harm and inefficacy of masks. But instead of continuing the debate over which doctor got it right or which scientific study we want to believe is the most accurate, I wish to pose a new question: the legality of mandating medical devices and the legality of quarantine protocols. Now, I'm not an attorney, so, and I'm not threatening any law action. I've done a little bit of research. So this is not, I just want to pose this question, okay? So Ohio Constitution ORC 4731.41, of which I brought a copy of, states, no person shall practice medicine and surgery or any of its branches without the appropriate license or certificate from the state medical board to engage in the practice. Masks are considered medical devices and are only to be recommended and regulated by a medical doctor. By the school board and perhaps store greeters at school mandating masks, we could be in direct violation of this code since they do not have a medical license. Thank you. In regards to quarantine, at the Ohio State House on August 24th, Joe Mazzola, Health Commissioner of Franklin, who is the Health Commissioner of Franklin County, stated the following. So when an individual is potentially exposed to COVID-19 in the school, they are excluded from school. They are not placed in quarantine because that is an official process as it relates to Ohio Revised Code. So you're absolutely correct. If you read the statutes, we're not even properly following the isolation statute. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have an issue with,
Wait 1 second.
we are having a meeting, an issue, something wrong. A wire, reconnect.
Okay, we're having a problem with the Zoom meeting, so We're not going into executive, session, no matter what the screen tells us, we're not going to do it. Pay no attention to the executive session behind the screen. We'll wait just a minute, I think, and see if we can get the maybe back. Somewhere else. So you're in as both a panelist and a guest.
We're hearing from, yeah, we're hearing from people that it's okay. It may just be what we're projecting. So yes, we can continue. It's being heard by the community.
Okay. So I'm hearing that even though the screen behind us is showing something different and maybe change momentarily, the Zoom meeting is still going on, so we can move ahead. Yeah.
Mr. Backlow.
Good evening, board. My name is Becca Moats. Should I start? I started. I have obviously you're all very familiar with me because I love to email. I wanted to thank you again for all the time and effort you put into this. I know this isn't what you guys are here to do. You're here to do education, but I do want to stress just the universal masking from a healthcare provider. I have been in healthcare for 17 years. I went through the first pandemic we had in 2009, which was the H1N pandemic. I think that speaks to some of my experience. I've been working in a pandemic and family practice for 18 months now and seeing what the hazards of COVID can do to people and to their families, both on the emotional and physical side. But if we don't do mitigation strategies on the physical side, we won't get back to normal where we can have kids in school. I know we all want to have our kids in school. American Academy of Pediatrics, CDC, ODH, and ODE all recommend universal masking for all grades, which would continue to be my recommendation as well. My last point on that is that we have a holiday coming up that we celebrate in the United States as a memorial, 9/11, where we all came together as a country and united as a front to protect ourselves. We are at a war against a virus right now, and the only way we're going to protect ourselves is that we all rally as a community and do the mitigation strategies that we've been asked to do by our healthcare providers and our healthcare people. So this is my plea from healthcare that we are exhausted and tired and don't want to do this anymore because I don't want to lose anybody else. So please wear your mask. Vaccinate if you can, and know that we trust us as a general medical consensus that we are here to protect you and not to hurt you. All I'm asking for is trust. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dufresne.
Mr. Ryan McCullough.
Hello, can you all hear me okay? I have quite the booming voice, so it's going to carry here. My name is Ryan Kulik, and my wife and I, we are a mostly proud parents of an 11-year-old here at Loveland Intermediary. I'm glad I get to sit where he gets to eat lunch every day. So my family, for the record, has had an incredible experience with Loveland schools. The teachers have been great. Some of you that do know me know that I've been vocal of the board at times, but today is a little bit different. I do want to commend the 3 board members that voted to give the superintendent the power to be nimble on this the mask mandate. But the 2 board members that voted against it, there are 2 things that I was a little curious about. First off, one of them used a lot of charts and graphs and stuff from a group called Real Data Trends. My day job, I do a political consultant is what I am. And I love data. I love using data to tell any story I want to tell. As a matter of fact, I learned how to do that by this book that's called How to Lie with Statistics. It's written in 1954. H.G. Wells like gives this a write-up in this. That's how old this book is. And I know how to lie with statistics. So when I looked up this real data trends, first off, they had no website. I don't know who they are. They say they're looking for the truth, all in capital letters, which makes me think they're a partisan group. And they are. As a matter of fact, I went into their social media and they positively engage with people that are anti-science and anti-vaccine. Look, if you're an adult, you can take all the horse medicine you want. You have that choice. But my 11-year-old doesn't have that choice. He doesn't. So first off, that data, whatever was in that meeting, you got to disregard it. But even their numbers, because they use percentages to hide, our numbers are going up. And at the end of the day, and I'll end with two things here. First, about the choice. If this school has 500 enrolled people that are under the age of 12 that cannot get vaccinated, 2%, which is what we expect the death rate to be with this COVID variant for children, is 20 kids. Is it 20? Or no, it's 10, sorry. I read books about lying with math. I don't know how to do math. Choose those 10 kids. Feel comfortable with that. Look in their faces, those families, what happens to them. When I was 11, I was in the hospital. Now, obviously, that was 30 plus years ago. But my mother to this day says she still cries thinking about that. So think about those families. Don't think about percentages. Think of those families and what that means. And the last thing I want to say is you want to look at good data. 100 years ago, during the great flu pandemic, the city of Philadelphia buried a quarter of its people. Now look at the city of St. Louis, who they dropped it. They flattened the curve. How did they do it? Masks. They closed schools. They socially distant. They knew what was right. They did the right thing. Let's look at that history and let's continue to protect our children. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Mr. Giuffre.
Hello, good evening. Anissa Dowling, obviously. I find it interesting that we've become so fearful of germs, but when is the last time the plexiglass dividers have been cleaned? I don't know if you all have been able to sit at the lunch table. That's rhetorical. I would like to donate my time to Elizabeth Mason. I have a couple minutes left and I think she has a lot more to say.
I'm sorry, we're going to get through the other people first, Elizabeth, and if we have time, we'll do that. That's just the way our rules are.
That's my time. Thank you, that's really my time. She donated.
Our policy states that each person will speak and then they can speak again at the end. She can use your time at the end.
That's how it works.
Don't get to make up rules.
That's what I heard her say. I didn't make up the rules. That's what they said earlier.
Are the rules. But having said that, I think we're going to make sure that she has a chance to finish, okay? Can we just get on with things?
I didn't know if she was going to have.
People pressing.
Who's next? What? Who's next? Kirsten Fisher.
Kirsten Fisher, yes, sir. So, no. Are we making assumptions? So I'm trying to figure out. Okay. I mean, have you guys ever been this scared in your life before? Does it make any sense? Thought we had liberty and justice for all. This is not liberty and justice. This is ridiculous. This is communism. Read you a little legal advice here. So face mask, and this is going back to Elizabeth's topic. Face mask is legally designated as a medical device by the Food and Drug Cosmetic Act, Section 201H, Definition 2. Therefore, in every state, including Ohio, face masks are regulated as a medical device. Even just recommending that someone wear a regulated medical device, a mask, is unlicensed practice of medicine according to ORC 4731.41 and 4731.34. This is a violation of and a 5th degree felony. Forcing anyone to wear a mask in a public accommodation building is also discrimination, much like if you would be afraid of someone because of their skin color. If you want to discriminate because of a mask, you can be sued. Now, I recommend everyone tell their kid not to wear the mask. There is no recourse unless you challenge them and then get a lawyer involved. I mean, just doing it is no recourse, but as soon as they discriminate, you can get a lawyer and you can own this place. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. So I've got one policy issue to address and one ethical issue to address. I was here at the board meeting on the 20th. At that board meeting during a recess, I inquired with one of the board members about the public participation policy. And it states in paragraph 8 of 0169.1, special meetings may be called periodically to facilitate extended public participation. All procedural rules of this policy will apply at such special meetings unless changed by a vote of a majority of the board at a particular meeting. Such changes could lengthen the amount of time allowed for public input. There is no removal of public participation at these special meetings anywhere in this policy. And as you mentioned, rules are rules. So what is the procedure for board members who violate this policy?
I can speak to that. That part of the policy speaks to a special meeting called for the purpose of public participation. It does not speak to all special meetings called by the Board of Education. Every meeting that we have either needs to be a regularly scheduled meeting, and they are scheduled at the beginning of the year in our organizational meeting, or if we need to call a meeting for a special purpose, then we do that during the year. And the meeting that you are referencing was called for the special purpose for the board to consider the face covering policy. It was not a special meeting called for public participation. So
regardless, a board meeting is a board meeting, and it says you have to allow public participation.
No, it does not. In fact, by law, the board does not have to allow public participation in a meeting at all.
So you don't have to follow your own policies, okay?
That's not what that policy says.
I love your interpretation of it. The second issue I have, I'm reclaiming my time. The second issue I have, there is a false equivalency made by one of the board members attributing it or equating an act of violence, i.e. you can swing a fist all you want until you hit someone in the nose, to a communicable disease. This is a tactic used by authoritarians to gain compliance and control and power. And it is disgusting. And regardless of where you fall on the mask issue, no one should tolerate such blatant disregard and such abhorrent rhetoric. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Jaffe.
Good evening. I didn't really learn about this meeting until about 2 hours ago, so I don't have anything extensive prepared. I'd just like to bring a couple of things to people's attention. I had 3 grandchildren graduate from Loveland, and I think they had a great experience, and I still have one here. As a scientist myself, I'm 74 and a half. I see a lot of things being said about science, which I find rather disturbing. And one of the things I hear people say quite often is that the science is settled. Anybody that's in science knows there's no such thing. Science by nature, if you're a scientist, I would just say to people, if you hear someone say that, run away. They're not a scientist. They're not believable. And when they start hitting you with data, you know, it's one-sided. So that's the first part. The second part is the virus is, no doubt it's taken some lives, but the lethality of the Delta is very, very low. I mean, nobody wants to die, but it's not a highly lethal virus. So in light with that, I think people need to understand, and this is not something you like to accept, it's never going to go away. This virus is here just like the flu. It's going to come back year after year. Hopefully it tempers down or it mediates downward. But we're having Dr. Fauci, who I have no respect for at all. I've lost all respect. Originally, it was 95%. Then we needed 2 shots. Now he's claiming we need a booster. To me, that's not good science. I don't think he's believable. But if you're going to listen to science, listen to both sides. We're not getting it a lot of times. We're selectively picking the quote experts. And then finally, the Constitution. Freedom is the ultimate thing we all want here, not division. And with everything going on in the world, we need to put the Constitution and our individual liberty above all of this. So I would carefully consider not mandating anything. Thank you.
Thank you. What was that name again, Mr. Joseph?
I'd like to say I agree with many of the statements made regarding the masks. On both sides, I agree with certain things. As far as pro-mask, there is responsibility, but we are responsible for our own health. I'm not responsible for anyone else's. They're not responsible for mine. If you really believe that I'm responsible for your health, then where does it stop? Am I to buy your groceries? Am I to rub your feet when they're sore? Am I to come clean your air conditioner filter to ensure you have proper indoor air quality? I don't think so. You know, there's no real security in life. You have the life you make for yourself. You know, we have this pandemic that emerged, and it's funny that the World Bank, you can find statements from COVID-19 test kits purchased in 2017, years before this all came out. You want to talk about data, you know, yes, data can be manipulated. You want to talk about the flu from 1918, Tucker Carlson showed a picture from that era of a boxing match where everyone was unmasked, anyone that was anyone in that town, like Obama's birthday party where there were no masks, Nancy Pelosi's Napa Valley gathering where there were no masks. If these masks are so important, why are not these important people wearing them? You know, it's true. Fauci himself sent an email saying masks are not that effective. And it's not just that. So let's say we give in and wear masks, even though they're found to contain bacterial pneumonia, meningitis, all kinds of nasty things. We all have a right to breathe freely. If you feel you need a mask, wear one. No one will hate on you for that. But you shouldn't try to force anyone anything that restricts their breathing. You give in to mask mandates, then come vaccine mandates. In France, you can't go into a grocery store without showing a vaccine passport. These vaccines that were approved only for emergency use only, they haven't been tested. The manufacturers have admitted that we're in the clinical trials. And there's no recourse for anyone if you have a vaccine injury, none whatsoever. So these vaccines are being tested on the people right now, and they're not really vaccines. You can look and find information to some of the things that are contained in these vaccines. Graphene oxide, parasites that are known to enable transmission of HIV to facilitate the AIDS virus. They say you can eat as much horse medicine as you want, but in India and Japan, they've had great success with ivermectin. Dosage and other medications consumed with the ivermectin have effects on the results too, to be sure, but there are positive ones. And you can find some of these studies on the National Institute of Health's own website where Fauci is employed. So I would say, mask up if you want, but beware where this leads. Do you really want to have a society where you can't go get food for your family, you know, unless you have a vaccine passport? What if you've had allergic reactions to vaccines before and you're hesitant to take one? This untested gene therapy that contains an mRNA messenger that enables your body to rewrite the DNA code that's not your own anymore. There's a lot more things to be concerned about than, you know, whether someone gets gross droplets on you. It's where this leads. There's a lot of peripherals here besides the mask mandate itself. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Baskin has to go last. Ms. Parker has to go last. Ms. Dowling, time for Ms. Mason. Ms. Mason, these require more than 2 minutes.
I think I can finish in 2 minutes.
Good. Ms. Parker, before you. That's fine. That's good. Ms. Parker. Mason.
Mason.
I'll try to talk fast. Thank you so much for giving me extra time. Okay, so I left off on the question of legality with in regards to quarantine. So I'm just going to read some lines from the Ohio Revised Code, section 3707.08, which is isolation of persons exposed to communicable disease. So when persons have or are exposed to a communicable disease for which placarding of premises is required by the board or the department, the board shall at once place in a conspicuous position on the premises where such a person is isolated or quarantined, a placard having printed on it in large letters the name of the disease. No person shall mar, remove, deface, or destroy such placard, so on and so forth. No person isolated or quarantined by a board member shall leave the premises to which he has been restricted without the written permission of such board until released from isolation or quarantine by it in accordance with the rules and regulations of the department. I can turn this in so you can read that in its entirety. I encourage you to read the whole statute. The Ohio Department of Health and Hamilton County Department of Health aren't even properly following the isolation statute. So I would argue that the requirements are, or rather recommendations, are null and void because the Department of Health is not doing their job to make sure quarantines are done properly according to the statute. How many people do you know who had one kid quarantined, but the other one could still go to school, or parents were still working while the kids were quarantined? That's not how the statute works. I myself would be interested in the data on kids who were quarantined, how many got sick. My children last year were quarantined 4 times. My oldest 3 times, my middle child once. Neither one of them got sick. I would be interested to know, out of all, I talked to Mr. Broadwater. We don't have that data, but I'd be interested to know how effective are the quarantines, or are we really just punishing sick kids? So thank you again, and I appreciate you listening.
Our technology, we have 5 minutes remaining for Mr. Parker.
Thank you.
Board members, superintendent, treasurer, thank you. I'm going to skip my intro here. Our school district went into the summer months and began the school year with the resolution that it would not require its students to cover their noses and mouths for any portion of the school day in order to participate in public school. Parents were led to believe that it would be their choice to make whether they wish for their child to utilize a medical device such as a respirator or facial covering while at school. Superintendent Mike Broadwater's message to parents on August 19th reported an awesome first day of school with students who were excited with a lot of smiles, and he thanked parents for their cooperation at a great first day. This message celebrated our capability as a community, and yet the decision was made to divert from parent choice to governor choice. To that I say, Governor DeWine does not have the authority to determine that it is safe or appropriate for my 7-year-old to cover her airways and hide her expressions, and frankly, neither do you. Emotional abuse is defined by the Claremont County of Ohio's Child Protective Services as chronic attitude or acts that interfere with the psychological and social development of a child. This current mask policy is isolating, dehumanizing, and inhibits crucial forms of expression and communication. Child Protective Services states that most abuse is not of willful desire, but rather the result from a poor reaction to a crisis. Board members, I do not deny that we were in the midst of a crisis. However, let us not inadvertently add to the trauma with these unscientific policies. The Loveland City School website contains, under its required postings, a notice of non-discrimination. The first line of the posting includes non-discrimination on the basis of disability, religion, medical condition, and genetic information. These are all among the many reasons that families may opt for their children to not wear masks or facial coverings. The school district's enforcement of this quarantine protocol, it seems to me, is by definition discriminatory, as that As that the notice continues, the district does not tolerate discrimination, harassment, or retaliation on these bases and takes steps to ensure that students, employees, and third parties are not subject to a hostile environment in district programs or activities. So I must insist that the school board disregard the quarantine recommendations from the Hamilton County Public Health and return to the original resolution that families be allowed to make their own decisions about masks and vaccines without retaliation from the school district. Lastly, I cannot address the school board without expressing my utter concern about the student vaccine clinic that has been scheduled for September 2nd and 3rd. The emphasis that parents are not required or expected to attend is a red flag and skirts parental consent. I can only speak for myself, but so long as my child is under 18 and my legal responsibility, she will never receive neither a tried and tested vaccine nor this experimental vaccine without my being by her side to oversee her care. This clinic is an oversight by the school district and an irresponsible use of the tax-funded school day. On behalf of the Loveland community, I say to the school board, stay in your lane. How families choose to respond to data related to the COVID pandemic is outside of your scope of responsibility. And since the school district cannot take responsibility for the negative health or academic consequences of the current mask policy and quarantine protocol, they must be abandoned. This monthly 2-hour allotment for community input is precious time. Let us break away from these absurd recommendations so that we may get back to discussing how to enrich our children's education experience in true Tiger fashion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for public participation. Mr. Giuffre, I have it ending at 6:52. All right, next on the agenda is a presentation. We have a guest this evening. Mr. Charlie Dressler is here to present an award, and I'm going to ask Mr. Broadwater to introduce Mr. Dressler.
Well, good evening. We have good news from the American Council of Engineering Companies receiving an award, and Charlie Dressler, as well as Don Columbi, will be here to present Mr. John Ames, our Business Operations Director, with that award. So, Mr. Dressler.
Thank you very much, board, staff, public administrators. It's a pleasure to be able to be here today and look back at what I see as a huge success last year. And what we did after we had done the work with the school district is we had submitted our work to the American Council of Engineering Companies to describe what we did. And what we did was assist you with your plans, policies, and procedures to be able to open up school and provide a healthy and safe environment for everybody that was in the school, utilizing our occupational and environmental health professionals. And so today, we're going to present you with an award that you can display in the school. And personally, I am a resident of Loveland. And so I sincerely extend my personal thanks to the board and the administrators for keeping the school open last year, for approaching it in a way that was going to avoid a complete shutdown of the schools, and for entrusting us with your assistance to do that well. So Don Columbi is going to join me now, and we're going to present this to Mr. John Ames, who is very pivotal in helping us just walk through all the schools, understand all of your policies, and get acclimated to the plans that you already had in place. So congratulations, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dressler. Thank you, Mr. Ames. Thanks to everyone on the staff. Thanks to LJB, and then thanks to everyone on the staff who did all of the things that we needed to do last year to try to keep our students safe in school. So thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is administrator reports. As you know, those are reports that are included in board docs. They are what the board members use to inform their decisions and discussion on issues that come before the board. Some of that information will come up as we go through different resolutions in our agenda. The next item then is the board president report. And I will simply report to this board that we continue to have email input, just as we received hearing of the public input this evening. We have received thank yous concerning masking. We have received emails opposing masking. We have received questions on the dashboard on the parameters of quarantine and questions on the vaccine clinic. So that's the email that we've received since our last meeting. I will report to you that at our last business meeting, we had some policies come before this board for a first reading. And I just want to let you know that those are going to be tabled until the superintendent and the superintendent's policy committee have had a chance to review the Neola audit. And then a lot of policies will be brought forward. We have determined that all of those policies can wait for adoption until we go through that audit. And that will, at this point, include the board policy 0145, which is filling a board vacancy. We discussed that. That is a board policy. That's not really a district operation policy. And so that's currently being tabled, although any board member could ask that it be brought back at any time if you'd like a second reading on that one. Question or?
Yeah, Kathy, just for purposes of educating the public on this, could you do 30 seconds or less on Neola and policies and how they come about and how they're maintained?
Neola is a company that we use. Some districts use OSBA as a policy review agency. We use Neola as a policy review agency. They are the ones that maintain on board docs for us the publication of all policies that we revise and change and add. And so Neola typically each quarter, so 4 times a year, brings forward any policies that need to be changed based on changes in federal or state law, or based on any case law that has come up and they see the need to change a board policy. They recommend new policies based on experiences, and these policies come through the policy committee to the Board of Education because it is the responsibility of the board to approve those. So that's how Neola works for us. We have asked them to do an audit because while we changed superintendents, while we did a variety of things, there were some Neola updates that did not get acted upon. And Neola has been helpful with us performing an audit so that we can get everything caught up all at once.
And would I be correct? I think I'm right in this, that the vast majority of our policies were originally written by Neola and have in various cases been modified, adapted to the board's position over the course of many years.
Really want to talk about making the sausage, don't you?
No, I just,
no,
I think
it's
this is
true.
one of those little areas where we talk about it because we kind of live in the space.
Right.
And, you know, policies were mentioned a couple of times here tonight. For example, how policies come into being is largely through kind of this national organization, as I understand it, and we review it and accept it, vote on it here if it's something new. If we have a need to modify a policy, we'll take that upon ourselves. I'm telling you when I was asking you to tell me, but you know,
You're
tell me when I
telling
go
me,
wrong. If needed, we'll get legal guidance on various policies, et cetera. So there's a lot of sausage making to the sausage making, I guess, right?
Yes, and that is true that we did originally, when I first got on the board, we had a big book that had all the policies in paper form. And when we went through and revised policies, we put them on pink paper. So we had white policies and then we had pink policies. And when everything got all pink, then we started all over again. We moved to OSBA and OSBA helped us. They have a system by which they codify policy and they helped us go through. And then we moved from OSBA to Neola. But you are absolutely right. Those agencies provide us policy information. And then the Board of Education here in Loveland makes sure that those policies are according to law, but tailored for the Loveland School District.
And just in full disclosure, let's say 2 years ago, I didn't know such a thing existed. I didn't understand this at all. And that's been a learning that I've had in the last year and a half now.
And I did have the meeting scheduled with the Neola representative doing the audit, and unfortunately they had a family situation. So we've got it rescheduled and we'll be going through the audit.
Thank you.
Okay, there are two other items on my report. You will see under my report in board docs, a document which is a survey that members of the public had requested information about. This survey was sent out to staff last year. It originated with our Diversity Advisory Board, but it came through the Loveland administration in the way that this kind of request can come through. We occasionally have requests to gather information that is helpful to the district, either about curriculum, about different activities in the district. So this survey was disseminated to Loveland staff. It was voluntary, and the results of the survey went back to the Diversity Advisory Board. They have shared the results with us, so that's what you see published in board docs. I believe the Diversity Advisory Board also conducted a student and a community survey concerning diversity in Loveland, but those surveys were not conducted through the district. It was just the staff one that went out through the district. And again, it was purely voluntary that staff members replied to it. So that's why you have that survey. It was requested by a member of the public, so I've provided that information to the board and through board docs to the public.
And for clarification, if I might, did I hear you say that there was a student survey?
I believe that there was a student survey as well.
And that was issued?
I don't know how that was.
But the district didn't have anything to do with it?
The district did not conduct that survey, no. The district did not provide that survey. I don't know.
And did we provide names or contact information?
I
or
don't
such thing?
believe that we did. I believe it was through the community survey that it was done. And then in that community survey, people were asked if there were students.
I see. Okay, thank you.
I don't believe that we would, as a practice, as a district, give out student names, give out student emails, provide for a survey of this kind. So the other item that I had on my report is the open issues, the board open issues. Mr. Doherty and I continue to work on an appropriate format for the website so that we can display board open issues. We are also hoping to work on the board purpose statement that shows up on the website. I do not have that on the board meeting for tonight. I am hoping that we are able to dedicate some meeting time to board governance and building a team for Mr. Broadwater as our new superintendent. Hard to believe that he's only been on the job for a month. I'm sure it feels like a year. But anyway, that board statement and that open issues item for the website will be an item that the board will work on. We're just not quite there yet.
For information of the board and the public, this open issues list was something that we talked about in here, I believe last June, as a step in transparency and kind of managerial accountability to make visible those things that we sort of say we need to work on and make them public and make sure that we do in fact follow up on them. We never really, we had some manual versions of it, but we never got it published because we were anticipating a change in technology. The board website is actually, excuse me, hosted by a piece of software. And we had an old piece of software and we have a new piece of software that just went in this summer. And we have, if you look at the board page, there is a placeholder on it now for the open issues list. That will actually be a link to what I think will be a Google Doc. And we'll just keep that Google Doc updated. But we're just finalizing some of those details, and then we have to collect our actual issues to populate that page with.
Thank you, Mr. Doherty. That's all I have for my report. Do any board members have any questions about any of that or anything that they need to report under this placeholder in the, I see heads shaking down there. Okay. All right, then we will move on to our superintendent's updates. Mr. Broadwater.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And I'm hoping everyone can see that. We all set? Okay, I wanted to present the board with a little short presentation as far as where we are with masking and kind of give everybody an idea of the thought process. And this is by no means inclusive of everything, but just let the board know the two questions that I have been most commonly asked. One is when will masks become optional again at the pre-K 6 level? And number two is when will masks become required at the secondary level? So you can see both those questions kind of work against each other, but also with each other. And we need to look at the data and determine where we're going. At the end of the day, one of our individuals that spoke this evening, we want to do what's best for our kids and trying to figure out what's best for our kids. As an educator, I'm not pro-mask, anti-mask, pro-vaccine, anti-vaccine. It's pro-kids and working with the guidelines that the Ohio Department of Health have given us with the quarantines. And you're starting to see more and more school districts that are having issues at the younger level where they are having numerous quarantines. And so what we don't want to do is go to remote learning, but at the same time, we would like to be able to figure out what is exactly the exit strategy, if you want to call that, for masks at the pre-K 6 level, or what is what's going to be the impetus that says we have to require it at the secondary level. So I'm going to kind of review, and this is, believe me, not inclusive of every data point that we look at. But when you look at the criteria for masking students pre-K through 6, this is one sliver of data that I would show you as to why, you know, I had heard somebody say that at the beginning we had optional and then why did we change? When you look at this data, and again, this is one little snippet, but in September 1st, as we get close to September 1st, we've got about 200 cases per day. In June, I want to say that's June, you had about 13 cases per day. The reason I show this is when we meet with our medical advisory board on Friday, my question, I know Dr. Swetchenow's question is, what is the exit strategy? We can't have kids in masks forever. Where are we going? And the easy answer would be with vaccines, but I don't think that's the easy answer in my role. The answer has to be what works best for our community. So when I look at this diagram, if the cases, and on Friday, Greg Kesterman, I meet with Greg Kesterman, who is the Director of Public Health at Hamilton County, along with all the superintendents at Hamilton County, made the statement that it looked like the cases had leveled off. Now we'll see again this Friday. I'll meet with them again this Friday with all the superintendents, and we'll see where that's going. You're hearing that there's a possible surge. We meet with Children's Hospital infectious control individuals who say that the hospitals are filling up. And so we take all that information and we try and digest it and see what works best for Loveland City Schools and the masking. So I just wanted to give the board a little snippet. We look at that. The goal is to get our kids out of masks and move forward as quickly as possible. But the ultimate goal is to make sure that we don't have kids in remote learning. That's what we don't want to have. So the second item I've got here, we did have the last board meeting, was a great idea. Somebody suggested we get a clinical psychologist on the board, and Ms. Washburn, I appreciate the connections we were able to make with Dr. Stephanie Weber, who is with Children's as well. Her comment, we made sure that we asked what are masks doing to our kids. We worry about, you know, as a father, I worry about it with my own children. We always worry about the developmental status of our kids. Her statement was, research is not showing any long-term effects on the social, emotional, or language development when students wear masks. The more important aspect is to keep students in the classroom, as there is evidence that remote learning and quarantines do have a negative effect on students. And I think, you know, when you look at that, basically it's saying it's certainly more important to have our kids in the classroom with the teachers, with their peers. And we've worked very, very hard, even though there is masking at pre-K through 6, when the students go outside, they can take the mask off. And so we're working through all of that. But again, Dr. Weber will be with us every Friday. And as we move forward, hopefully in a positive direction, and the Delta variant starts to dip, then we can ask her further questions. But that's an example, and it was a great idea to put a clinical psychologist on the board.
Mike?
Yes.
Can I ask you a question on that?
Sure.
I just want to make sure of this. She had heard, I presume, the question before you asked her. Right? I guess what I'm saying is that this is not the first time she's being asked this question.
From me, it was.
Well, yeah, I understand that. Sorry if I inferred otherwise.
Yeah.
I'm saying that this is an issue that's out there.
Oh, sure.
Right.
Sure.
So
Absolutely.
she's had time to research this and to give you more than an off the. I'm leading you here because we haven't had a chance to talk about this, but I'm just trying to understand, how deep is her
Absolutely.
position on this? And
so to your
research, et
point
cetera?
is, it wasn't as if she just flippantly answered it because Mike had asked it. That is what her research is in. She is a pediatric clinical psychologist. So it is and will be with the mass. It'll always be the question, how are they affecting the kids? So yes, she has had extensive study in it before we asked her the question. Yep.
And
okay.
Oh.
Okay. All right.
I was going to say,
Sure.
I was just, the giggling out there is baffling to me, but the comment was made about board selected experts. So this is just a good time to jump in. When we say board selected experts, these aren't people that we personally know and are friends with. They are medical professionals that work for Cincinnati Children's Hospital, which is where we send our children. We didn't ask for comments, thank you. Which is where we send our children when they're sick. These are the experts who are doing the studies, who are seeing our children, seeing your children. And the other comment to Mr. Doherty, when you asked if it was the first time Dr. Weber was hearing it, I know that she also did consult with Dr. Manning. Yes, Dr. Manning, who I know has a wonderful reputation in Cincinnati, has been working with children with autism and other clinical and psychological needs for well over 20 years. So I know that she was involved. She just had patients at the time of the advisory board meeting.
Yep. Okay. The second question was, if we move forward, when will or will we have to mask when we look at grades 7 through 12? What we're doing with the dashboard is on Friday afternoon, we send out a parent newsletter. So the information that we send on that dashboard goes Monday through Thursday so that we can get it out on Friday. Hamilton County Public Health requires that we report on Monday. So in that newsletter, we put a link for the Monday dashboard. That would be the most up to date, but I do want to put the Friday snapshot in the Friday newsletter so we have an idea of what we're looking at. And as you look through the dashboard that we have for Loveland, right now, I would say we're doing very well. When you look at LECC, LPS, LES, LIS has 2 student positives, LMS is 2. We have a total of 4. When you look at other school districts, that's not the case. So when you say we're doing mitigation, it's mass, but it's more important in terms of the cleaning and all the other mitigation factors that are going on. So right now we're in a good spot. The middle school, you have 2 positives, 1 close contact. The high school at this point, we have 0 positives, 0 close contacts. Along with that, some of the emails had very good questions when it came to student attendance. So we've been looking at student attendance, talking to Judy Leamy, who is our school nurse with our health service. If we have a student that has been absent for a couple days, we will call and check in and see if maybe they have 2 or 3 of the symptoms and just make sure that we have everybody reporting. But right now the attendance is at the elementary is very good. At the middle school and the high school, we're down. It's normally at about the 5% range. We're at about 9% right now. And Judy Leamy would say that there's a little more RSV out there. There is right now some strep throat going around. And so if there are students that miss a couple days, they are calling to just check in and make sure that we're checking in and making sure that we're okay with the families. But right now, we're doing very, very well. The concern would be at the middle school and the high school, making sure that those numbers stay there and monitoring that every week. And that's where we hope they stay, so we can stay right where we are with the secondary. I had a board member ask for, get rid of this. A board member asked for some of the other districts and where they are. So I just grabbed some local districts. Lakota, who is masking pre-K through 12. You can see that the way they break it up, they do have the attendance rate on there. They do not have the quarantines on there. The way they have it broken up is students on the left, staff on the right. So you can see that their numbers are pretty good, okay? But that's how they're reporting with the dashboard. The weekly total, and this is August 23rd through 27th, they had 35 positive cases with students. And then when you look at the total staff, it's 6. One thing I do want to mention with ours, when I say positive students, I should clarify, that is coming from outside in the community, but those students are positive. We have not seen anything within the buildings yet.
And Mike, just for context,
sure.
Lakota's student population, it would be.
They got about, that's a good question, 14,000.
So they would be 3.5 times our size.
Yes.
And you said 35 cases, did I hear?
Yeah, they've got 35 student cases, positive cases. They don't have the quarantines on here, so I don't know that.
And we have, so I think it's just for.
Yeah, pull up the chart here. Yeah, we have 4 student positives, 1 close contact. When you look at the community, we have 34 community cases, which those would be kids that were not in school, but the parents self-reported that they were positive. Yes, yeah. Yeah, the other thing that I should mention is when you look at the attendance rate at the middle school and the high school, one thing I would commend our parents in our community is if the students are not feeling well, they are keeping them out and making sure that they're okay. And that certainly is going to help with the numbers in the high school as well. Okay, the next one I've got is Milford. Milford right now is pre-K through 6. You can see kind of some of the hot spots right now. They have 38 positives all the way to the right there. That's students. They have 6 positive staff. Students in quarantine, they've got a lot. They've got 177 in quarantine. Staff in quarantine is 3. You can see the 2 largest numbers there are their junior high school and their high school, but they've got an elementary school at 27 as well. So the junior high and the high school, they're not masking, and those numbers are a little bit higher. But again, at Loveland, we're seeing much better results so far.
And that's, am I reading that right? Is that 6,700 students?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So they're 50% more than us.
Yeah, they're larger.
Wow. Their numbers, their rate would be substantially higher than what we're seeing.
Yes.
Too.
Yeah. If you look at their quarantines are much higher.
Yeah, very much so.
And I don't, again, these are just kind of snapshots. You don't know if they're not able to maintain the 3-foot distance. I don't know. Next one I've got is Forest Hills. When you look at Forest Hills, all of their buildings are on here. They've got in the new cases, they have 1 staff. They've got 26 students, and those would be positive. So it's a high number. They have 0 staff in quarantine. They have 45 students in quarantine. Close contacts, they have 0 staff. They have 153 students. So again, those numbers are much higher than what we are seeing currently at Loveland, which we would love to keep it that way. But they do have 26 positive students, which generated some quarantines. And they have about 7,500 students. And I think we've got one more, Mason, which has about 10,000 students. Currently, you have 27 up top there, 27. They have 49 that have returned. Their total is 76 positive. So that rate's pretty good. They're pretty large districts. They've got a pretty good rate in regards to the positive. So when you look at all of those districts and you look at the Loveland snapshot, I would say our buildings are doing very, very well. And I would commend our staff. Our staff We did say that we wanted them to mask pre-K through 12. They've done that. They've done a very good job with that. We are allowing, if they're 6 feet away, if they need to present, we do allow them to take the mask down. For now, that's where we are. So when I look at the two questions, the one question is, when can we get the mask off? And that's, I kind of gave you a little pinpoint. It's not necessarily just waiting for a vaccine. It's looking at the spread and where we are, and hopefully that goes down. And then the second question, hopefully we never have to address. If our numbers stay where they are, we're doing pretty well. But the concern is it can grow pretty quickly. So we want to make sure we keep an eye on it.
So can you highlight any differences in these surrounding districts, mitigation strategies versus ours?
Forest Hills, I know the pre-K through 6, they're allowing kids to unmask in between class at the elementary level. So in other words, they're masked in the classroom. When they go outside of the classroom in the hallway, I don't know if it's PE, but lunch. So that would be a difference. As far as the other schools, I know Mason is exactly what we're doing, very similar to what we're doing. Milford would be the same. Lakota, like I said, is doing pre-K through 12.
So drawing from our experiences last year, we had the LJB folks work with us last year, and bar none, we had the lowest rates of everybody. But everybody else wasn't particularly high. As looking at a lot of numbers, clearly we were better, no doubt about it. And,
sure.
And I think the fine tuning of the mitigation strategies here probably caused that discernible difference. Okay. This time, maybe there's some carryover, things that we learned the last time. Somebody asked about the last time we cleaned the plastic dividers. And I knew the answer to that because you told me the answer to that. Because when you came here, you said, I need to up the frequency of cleaning those things.
Yes.
And they're probably unclean because of the end of the day.
It's a difficult task. It's manpower, and it's being able to do it, but you want to stay on top of it. And I commend John and his group have done a great job of staying on top of it as best they can. And I think it's evident in the numbers, but every week is a new week, and we want to just make sure we're watching it.
So it leaves me, again,
Sure.
it's the numbers, but it leads me thinking that the community penetration of infections are probably the major differentiating factor here. And I know we had, what do we have, Hamilton County numbers up earlier.
Yes.
Is there, I know this reporting keeps getting better and better, but still may not be what we want, which is 45140. Do we have data that tells us what that looks like versus the communities that these surrounding districts are dealing with?
Yeah, we do to a point. If you look at the Hamilton County Public Health website, they do have Loveland. They have the 45140. We were at, let's say 21,625. It has leveled off, if not gone down a little. And so Loveland, the community, we always say schools are kind of a microcosm of community, right? So whatever's in the community, we try and think we do a little bit better in the schools. But it is kind of a microcosm. But the Loveland community has done a pretty good job. When you go to that map, it would not surprise me if the numbers go down if the Delta surge stops. But I look at that map daily. I go on and take a look and see where we are.
So are you able to do the same thing for the surrounding districts that have much higher case rates than we're seeing?
Yeah, if you go on there, you can see, for example, you can see Milford, Anderson Township, and Westchester's not there. Mason's up in Warren. But you can see the majority of all of Hamilton County, you can see, and you can see where the hot spots are. They've got different colored blue on there. The darker blue, the more cases you have. So Loveland actually went down a little bit this past week.
So just, I'll probably do this myself, but it might be worthwhile to further contextualize these numbers as we're working our way forward. So we have a better handle on,
Sure.
what degree of causation we could hang our hats on, and maybe a little better clarity on when to change direction if that seems warranted at some point down the road.
It does. The data point, and I said this, I think I said this the last time, the data points that get a little frustrating is they really don't delineate between the age levels. In other words, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 7-year, and some of that data is not real empirical in terms of the actual groups. They'll say 5 through 17. And I emailed a doctor this week at Children's to ask how the hospitals are and what the ICU looks. And the values I get is it's double or triple. Me being a numbers guy also, I'd like to know numbers. I'd like to know what that means, and I don't. And I don't know if Dr. Swetchino has anything to add. But the medical advisory board, I can tell you, has been very, very helpful for me. I always look through the educational scope, but the medical scope helps, and not all those medical advisors agree with each other, and that's okay. That's what it's supposed to be. We're supposed to.
Last question for you,
Sure.
then I'm done with this. In your medical advisory board, I would appreciate hearing, because this is some of the research I've done. It seems like there's some different concerns with Delta with respect to long COVID and pediatric cases. Emerging data for sure, but higher incidences was the emerging concern of long COVID in pediatrics. And a lot of folks may not be following that one real closely. It's not necessarily a hospitalization issue, but it's clearly an individual performance concern, athletically and intellectually. I hope short-term deficits, but nevertheless discernible deficits persisting for a number of weeks in some cases. If the data finally stabilizes and it turns out not to be an issue, one more thing that we don't have to worry about, and that's great.
Right,
But there was
right.
some conjecture that this was a growing concern with Delta in kids.
Good.
So the
Yeah.
experts weighing in on that would be good to know.
I'll make sure I touch base this Friday with. Yep, good question.
Any other
Okay.
questions for Mr.
That's it.
Broadwater?
I would just add, you've done a great job with a very hard start, and you've put processes in place to help us to be as successful as possible, and I really appreciate that.
Sorry, trying to get to the unmute button.
Okay. Do you have a question?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you have a report on waivers related to COVID and masks?
So the waivers we're currently at, I want to say it's about 1%. It's hovering right around 1% total for pre-K through 6, which the good news means we're at 99% masked, and we are working with individual families. But yeah, we're at about 1 to 1.2%.
Do you know what percentage is medical versus other?
Majority of it's the religious. We've got, I believe, two medical.
Anything else for Mr. Broadwater? Anything else for your updates, Mr. Broadwater?
That is it. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go into the board resolutions, I just want to give the board warning. I meant to ask this during my report. Before the end of the meeting, I will ask you about possible additional meeting dates. We currently do not have a work session scheduled for September. So our next meeting is our board meeting on our business meeting on September 21st. There is a possibility that sometime, well, there's definitely a desire to hold a board governance session. We've been trying to schedule that and have been not able to do that so far. Possible that there might be a need for a meeting concerning treasurer search. So I just ask you to look at your calendars, and before we close the meeting, we'll see if there's a date we can come up with. I'm not sure that we will, but we'll look at that before the meeting's over. So then I would say that we move from superintendent updates to board resolutions, and there are 2 of them this evening. The first is the resolution to approve student reps to the board for 2021-2022. Is there a motion to approve Nicole Pedicini and Austin Smith as our our student representatives to the board?
So moved.
Mrs. Washburn moved. Is there a second? Ms. Pettit seconded. Any questions or discussion? It's very nice that we got to meet them, and we will get them set up at the board table for the next time when they come to give us reports. Thank you, Mrs. Washburn and Dr. Swetchnow, for conducting the interviews and getting that all organized. For those of you in the audience who are not aware, there aren't a lot of school districts in Ohio who have student representatives. We were among the first to do it, and there still aren't very many that do. We think that it is a good way to give students some opportunities to look at public service and to look at how a Board of Education works. And so we're happy to have students who are interested in applying for that. Okay, no questions, discussion? Mr. Giuffre, can we vote on that?
Yes.
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 Motion carried. The second board resolution is to approve the purchase and installation of a mobile classroom unit. We need a motion to approve the purchase and installation of one 24x50 mobile classroom unit.
I'll move.
Mrs. Washburn moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Dr. Swetchnow seconded. This was a motion that was to be considered at our last meeting. A little bit of confusion over which one we were buying and the exact price. So we've got that nailed down this time. And so that's asking for board approval for that classroom to be used as a music classroom in the amount of $181,202. Questions, discussion? No, Mr. Giuffre, can we vote on that?
Yes.
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 Motion carried. We move into treasurer resolutions. You do have a treasurer report. We thank Mr. Giuffre for handling the interim treasurer duties. And so you do have a report, and there are several items that are under here. Mr. Giuffre, before we make a motion to approve those 6.1, 6.2, 6.3, and 6.4, do you have any additional report other than your written report? Okay. Is there a motion to adopt those 4 treasurer resolutions? It is resolution 6.5. Did I hear Ms. Pettit? Is there a second?
Second.
Mrs. Washburn seconded. So we have those items. You have the regular financial reports. You have disposal of inventory. You have a compensation adjustment agreement, which is attached to board docs, and you have donations. Any questions or discussion?
Kathy, just.
Mr. Doherty.
Yeah, I'm sorry, just a quick clarification. None of these require unanimous votes? Or do they?
I don't believe so, no. There's none.
Because I'll be abstaining again on these. Okay.
And again, that's the unfortunate situation that you had, that you arrived from out of town at 6 o'clock this evening, or close thereof. So
Correct.
we appreciate you making the effort to be here. We really do.
And I apologize, I couldn't get through this other stuff, but.
You can't drive and read board reports at this.
You know, and.
No.
Let's just leave it alone.
I'm sorry.
and
That
that's
was
fine.
it. I could do a podcast. I could do a podcast and read them. I'm sorry, but the amount of time that it would take me to read the cash reconciliation, the cash summary, the check register, no, I could not put
You
those
know,
on a video.
just for reference, I do always ask questions about individual line items in the check register. Yeah, so.
You're off the hook this
Less work this time.
I actually, Kathy, just have one quick question, and I know that I've asked this before, but just to be clear, in our inventory disposable, there's a large amount of out-of-date electronics, specifically DAC Tech Pladlet tablets. What's our policy on those tablets? Are they being recycled? Are they being sold back? Are we using them for offsets? Is there any value to, if we're just disposing them, allowing community members to request them?
Mr. Ames will give us the policy and the procedures concerning disposal of technological equipment.
All right, am I on? Okay. So all of the items that you're looking at are from St. Columban School. And St. Columban, everything that they receive from us through auxiliary funds, they have to track all the way through its life cycle. So most of the things that you're looking at, they have finished their life, and they will give them either to us to recycle or they send them out to recycle. But all of our items are sent out for recycling. Nothing goes in the trash as long as we have our hands on it.
Just so
That answer?
folks who maybe couldn't hear it, all of that tech equipment is through St. Columban, what is provided to St. Columban, and then it has to be disposed of through our process. Any other questions? All right, then, Mr. Giuffre, can we vote on those items?
Yes. Mrs. Washburn?
Yes.
Dr. Swetchnow?
Yes.
Abstain.
Yes, motion carried. Thank you very much. All right, we are then moving to Director of Human Resources, and there are 2 items and they will be separate under there. So I know that Mr. Carter will be reporting to us, but let's go ahead and have if there is one, a motion to approve the resolutions of the Director of Human Resources, including resignations and employment of certified, classified, homebound substitute and supplemental positions for the 2021-2022 school year. Is there a motion? Ms. Pettit moved. I'll second it. I'll second that motion. I know that Mr. Collier has included a report, and then there is a list, and I'm going to ask him if he has additional report because there were a few items that needed to be added this evening.
Yes, thanks, Dr. Lorenz. There are a couple of things I want to make sure to point out. I want to start at the top of the report where there, A1, where there is a resignation that's happening this winter, and that is Miss Kathy Hosea. I think you guys probably know who she is. She's been with the district for the past 29 years as a health aide, keeping our kids safe here at our schools. I know I first met her probably about 20 years ago when she was working at the intermediate building. She's currently working at the LCSD building. And I just wanted to make sure to point out that we are really happy for her, that she is able to step away and enjoy retirement. And we really appreciate her dedication and loyalty that she has shown to our district. And I just wanted to make sure that that didn't go unnoticed because Kathy has done a really great job for us. Moving on down, so a couple of things that were added before the initial report was sent to you guys. There are a couple of things that are just some yearly agenda items. Those are really not anything special to note. However, I do want to make sure to point out that there was a typo. This would be at 5C. Just section C. And I would just want to make sure that you guys realize that there was a typo of some extended days for some folks. Those are our speech language pathologists. The minutes from June 29th on the agenda had read 6 days, and it really should have been 10 days. Just wanted to make sure to point that out so you know that. There was also something that I want to make sure to bring up. There was a comment before about making sure something that I'm going to be starting to report to you guys are the number of FTEs, and if from meeting to meeting, if we're increasing or decreasing FTEs. I don't have that report for you tonight. That is something I'm going to be working on, but I do want to point out in section G that that these folks here that are being hired, those are replacements and not additional FTEs. Just wanted to make sure to point that out. For this particular report, that is all that I have to update you with.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Garth? I do want to note as well, we don't get to honor retirees as much during this whole pandemic thing as we used to. And I just want to say that Kathy Hosea has been a great employee of the Loveland District. And I'm just thankful that she decided to retire after my last grandchild went through LECC. It was so was so great to see Kathy and work with her there at LECC. So she waited until my last grandchild moved out. So she's allowed to retire, I guess. So any questions for Mr. Carlier about the HR report?
Just for clarity, we're only talking about 7.1 at this juncture, correct?
That's correct.
Yes. All right. Mr. Giuffre, can we vote on item 7.1, the HR?
Lorenz,
Yes.
Dr. Schwarzenegger,
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn,
Yes.
and Mr.
Yes.
Motion carried. Now we move to 7.2, which is a motion to accept the negotiated agreement with Loveland Education Association, the LEA. So to approve that collective bargaining agreement effective July 1, 2021 through June 30th, 2023. It also authorizes the Director of Human Resources in conjunction with the LEA to make grammatical and non-substantive revisions as approved by legal counsel. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Doherty moved. A second?
Second.
Dr. Swetchnow seconded. I believe, Mr. Collier, that you have a report before we begin to ask any questions or have any discussion on this.
Absolutely. I do want to have some talking points and making sure that you guys are all up to speed on the LEA contract that you're going to be voting with for tonight. The contract itself is for 2 years. Dr. Lorenz, you just mentioned would be retroactively beginning July 1st of 2021 through June 30th of 2023. There were really, what I want to make sure to get across is there were really 3 main goals that everybody in the room really had. And this is a process that we went through, and it was very lengthy. And I want to touch upon these 3 goals. One being that there was a real need for short-term money savings for the district. And that was something that both sides were keeping in mind on how it is that we could have, when looking at compensation of certified staff, how could we have some short-term savings? And I want to make sure to point out that there is no base increase for the 2 years. It is at 0% for both. And there was also a need for us to talk about the average teacher pay of Loveland versus some area districts. And we were sitting at a very high percentile rank. And we did lots of conversations and lots of information gathering to look at other districts and what their pay is and what their structures are. And a part of that short-term money savings with this 2-year agreement, it's taking that that percentile rank being in the high 90s and bringing it down to a much more reasonable in between the 75th and 80th percentile. I will, once we're finished, give an opportunity for Mr. Doherty and Dr. Schwarzenegger to add anything to this, because they were with me and the administration at the table with the LEA group, and they might be able to add some additional talking points. Another one of the big goals, other than the short-term money savings to the district, is there was a real need for us to restructure the salary schedule itself. The current structure right now is that teachers, when they are at step 20, that would then be the max, basically, that they could move on this salary schedule. So they would kind of, in essence, kind of be at their highest earnings after 20 years. STRS has and probably will continue to change the retirement rules for folks. And here in the past 5 years, they have made changes to where teachers are going to have to be teaching longer to be able to reach the spot at which they were able to receive full benefits. So if you take a teacher who, kind of like the typical scenario, got out of college, got their first teaching job, and then they have been teaching ever since then, you kind of say, well, somebody was probably 22 or 23 when that happened. And to reach the full retirement age, it's moved now to the age of 60. So you're looking at 38 years that they would have to be teaching, which is an increase from where it was before. And having a scale that where they were reaching their max potential for earnings at year 20, seeing that they might really be here until they've taught 38 years, there was a real need for us to make a change. Is everybody okay? So converting to that new schedule, the salary schedule that we are proposing today stretches that out to 27. And some of the research that we had done, that is more in line of what the average is for our area districts, and we were sitting at 20 instead of 27. The third point that I want to make sure, or third goal that we were working on and putting our heads together with, is a long-term money savings to the district as well. And converting to that new salary schedule to where teachers aren't earning their max pay until they have been with the not with the district, but has on step 27. That of course helps us out, along with, which is a really big thing, is for the next 2 years, there being a 0% on the base increase really helps us in the long run as well, included with the short-term money savings. So to kind of sum a little bit of that up, I want to make sure that we're clear on, for 21-22 school year, there would be a 0% base increase. If a step is warranted, meaning like if a teacher was available for a step, the year that they worked this past year, they would be given a step for that. And then they would be converting from the old salary schedule to the new salary schedule. For school year 22-23, there would be also a 0% base increase, given a step if they are working this current year, and we'd be talking about what their pay would be for the following year if it's applicable. But there isn't any other movement because they're at the new schedule. And so it would just be a 0% on the base, but with their step. Something else I want to make sure to point out and note is that this was a collective idea, that recognizing and knowing that the district is in a situation to where going back to our community and asking for more money is a pattern that we want to make sure that we are extending the amount of time in between where we have to go back and ask money for our community. And collectively, the LEA and our side, we kind of agreed that these were our terms that we were working under these three main goals. And they did a really nice job, making sure that their employees and the members of their union were being represented well, but also keeping in mind of the situation that the district is in. And I'm really proud to be able to say that, it was a very long, lengthy amount of time it took for us to get to this point. But I feel like that both the LEA and our administration, kept to our word about making sure that we were making strides to make improvement for not only our staff, but our community as a whole. Dr. Schwetzenau and Mr. Doherty, if you have anything to add, I would be glad to let you guys talk.
Well, I can absolutely jump in. I think you even sold yourself a little bit short on how much time and effort it took to get these two groups to the spot that we felt was important for our community. There's no doubt that the teachers are the lifeblood of our schools, and there's no doubt that we have excellent teachers. And there's no doubt that our teachers are on average well tenured, and that's led to problems. And one of the problems was that our salary schedule was outdated. And it took a lot of long conversations for the realization that we needed to change that to kind of sink in for all of the parties. But they were collaborative conversations that took place, really almost over a year. And we started having those preliminary conversations last September. I think you hit the nail on the head on when I joined the board last summer. The conversations that I had with the community about the levy and the failure of the levy, a lot of them centered around the cost structure of the district. And in a school district, the vast majority of the costs on an annual operating budget standpoint is in your personnel and in your salaries. And so we really broke it down into, what's the short-term problem? Can we fix the short-term? And then what's the long-term problem? And having the LEA work with us to understand that and accept that we needed to try to fix both of those was really a huge ask for them. And they really stepped up to do what was best for our kids and our community. So I was happy to be part of that process. I don't want to do it every 2 years. So hopefully it will be a little easier next time now that we've laid the groundwork.
Thanks for that, Dr. Schwartz. Now, Mr. Doherty, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, first of all, you did a fantastic job yourself in this, and your understanding of the teachers' role, the teachers individually, how this all comes together within a school system, your understanding of all of that, and your ability to relate to everybody in the room, I thought was a very important dynamic. So thank you for being who you are, and thank you for being in the job that you're in, because I think you'll be a real asset to the district moving forward. To echo much of what Eric said, this was a long deal. Yeah, I've had, I don't know how many dozens and dozens and dozens of agreements. I've had overall responsibility for over a lot of years, and most of them, go nowhere near as long as this one went. A year is probably about right. And where we ended was totally different from the first kind of back and forth discussions. Where we ended, I think, strategically was very much in line with where we dreamed about getting to. But I think, as I said during some of the discussions, when everybody starts to get a little unhappy, you're probably getting to the end of the line, because nobody walks out of a labor agreement negotiation. Almost nobody does and say, yes, that's it. That's perfect. Oh, God, that's a great deal. Because labor negotiations are just that. They are a back and forth. And anything that you want causes something else to have to give in the agreement. So arriving at a place that kind of had the fundamentals that this one did was actually very cool. This is a very complicated transition. The new contract versus the old contract is got some real fundamental differences, and agreeing on a strategy to end up in someplace very different versus just talking about X% of a raise and moving on, which is what normally happens, right? This is not that at all. So as people start to analyze this, it's a complex one to really understand. We believe that it will yield some of the lowest rate of increased cash spend for the district that we have seen in a number of years. And as you aptly pointed out, it lays the foundation for a strategically different positioning. Instead of being essentially the highest paid district, give or take one, depending on where exactly you're looking at, almost in the state. We're now coming down to a very competitive position where it's not the highest paid, but it's well paid enough to attract the excellent talent that's been the hallmark of the teacher group here in this district for many years. So I think we all left comfortable that the district will be able to attract the talent to build on the success of this district down the road in the future with this new agreement, and get it set up in a way that it's far more financially responsible than where we were. And I have to give a great deal of thanks to the teachers, both their bargaining committee and the rank and file on this, because I understand that the rank and file was very largely in favor of the deal at the end of the day. But it represented an understanding of the district's situation. And I think it represents a commitment on the part of the teachers to the long-term success of the district. They did this at a time where, frankly, some other districts were throwing around money like you couldn't believe, throwing around, COVID relief money and things like this. And human nature is apt to say, I think I should deserve that as well. But they were much bigger than that. They understood that the money that's sitting in the district's bank account is very precious, and it's the lifeblood of the district going forward for some time to come. And they were able to put aside those outside influences and look at the place they work and make a commitment to its long-term success. And I have to give them a lot of credit for that. People don't do that every day, and they did it here. So I think it was quite an experience for everybody. And congratulations to you, to the teacher's side of this. And I'm certainly, if it doesn't sound like it already, recommending that we approve this, because I think it's the right thing to do without doubt.
Thanks, Mr. Doherty. I do just want to make sure, one other thing, that while Dr. Schwarzenau and yourself were speaking, something that came to mind is that, I think on both sides, there were individuals that came to the table who had different expertise levels, right? And they were good at something, unique or different than other people. I feel like that the leadership of the LEA, they brought unique perspectives to the table. I think they brought folks who were able to generate some ideas for us to think about. And I also think on our end, on our side, meaning the administrative side and the board side, we also brought a collective understanding that we were all uniquely different in certain areas, but as a collective group, I think all aspects were represented. I want to thank the LEA for this. Having a 0 on the base and 0 on the base is hard to do. But I have to tell you that the ideas that they generated and how can we get there together was very much appreciated. And I appreciate both of you bringing your levels of expertise to the table as well. It was very beneficial. So thank you for everything. And hopefully the vote goes well tonight, and we can celebrate with the group tomorrow, letting them know that, hopefully that we're moving in the right direction. And I feel like the progress that we've made, that we are moving in the right direction. And I think that we have established a very high level of trust between the LEA and our leadership. And that's what I want to make sure that we continue to have, is that we trust each other. So thank you.
Chris, can I just add one more thing? There's been talk about teacher contracts for a long time in our community. Is there a way that people will be able to download or review this contract once it's finalized and released?
Yeah, so this is our plan. We do have to, after the vote tonight, and if the vote goes well, we have to get back together and we have to sign the agreement, and that's going to take a little bit of time for us to make sure that we do. But outside of that, there is a place where not just our agreements, but all agreements for the state of Ohio are all housed, and we are going to provide that link. It's called SERB, SERB, and you can look up any school district. And you can look up their collective bargaining agreements. Ours will be posted there. We want to make sure that any changes that get made have to be sent to SERB, and that is something that we're required to do. And so if there are any changes, like was mentioned, if there's any small changes or things that wouldn't come before the board, but the errors that we find, those adjustments consistently get updated at SERB, and those are available for not only our district, but for everybody, and could be looking at to compare district to district. It's a nice place to go to.
Arth, just to put a little texture on that, the agreement is probably what, 60, 75 pages
Yes.
long, right? So the grammaticals and the tweaks here and there, that's what you're saying. You need a little bit of time to make sure everything is perfect before it gets posted.
Yes, and maybe Mr. Giuffre can tell us about the timeline of when you submit these agreements to SERB, about how long it takes for them to post. I'll let him answer that because I haven't sent one over to SERB ever before. But yes, we will make sure that we have, dotted our I's and crossed our T's, we have signed off, and then it'll be posted, and not only for anybody in our community to view, but anybody can get on that website to be able to view it. Great.
I would also comment that we have had a request already to include the classified staff agreement that was agreed to last month, include that in minutes. And The reason that these contracts have not been in minutes, and the reason they probably should not be in minutes, is because they are living documents. So not only any changes for typos or grammatical changes and those kinds of things we made, but also if there is any change during the period of the contract, that would be a memorandum of understanding that's agreed upon. And so if you have something that's in the minutes, that's a static document, and you don't see the changes, and you have to really look to see which period the contract is for if you just find it in a meeting minutes. But if you know that it's available on the State Employee Relations Board, that's the up-to-date contract. That's the one. And as you said, that can be compared with other contracts as well. So.
Yes, thank you.
Maybe to ease access to it, we're gonna provide the website, the SERB website somehow.
I believe so. I think that's what we're planning to do. Instead of linking our actual document, because as soon as we make a change and that link is then broken, we're going to give the SERB website link, because that is a consistent link. And then you would just search Loveland City Schools and pull up those agreements.
And where will that be found?
Where that link will be found?
Yeah, how
I
is the public
believe
going to know?
I believe
where
that
link is?
I believe our plan is to be posting that to our website so that it's always there for people to view. Basically, if you are wondering about contracts, it'll say you can click here and then search Loveland City Schools and find it.
We've had that discussion. They have a repository of records. Those links would be on that site, on that page.
Are you thinking on the treasurer's page or some?
We'll find an appropriate place where it's easy to find for everybody. It'll have more than just those links, but it'll be a place where folks can go to get information.
Okay, so maybe preemptively, anybody from the public that might be interested in that, what are we doing? We're just asking them to stand by for a short period of time until we can get it to the state.
Yeah, in terms of being able to get it to someone, if there is an individual request, we can, as soon as we have the signatures and it is actually final, we can get them a copy of that. And I believe the other, the OPSI contract, we have that available. We made that available for that particular person or any persons to be able to pick that up.
With the understanding that it's as Kathy said, it's a living document.
That's
This
correct.
is a point in time. That's a
You got
snapshot
it.
of what it is.
Right.
Today.
That's
we're going to change it tomorrow.
That's
but
the downside to it, is that somebody could be looking at a quote old copy and not the most up to date. And we can surely do that. I would just say that to make sure, if you're always wanting to look at the most up to date recent version of it, going to the State Relations Board is the place to go.
Okay.
Mr. Doherty, what I can also do is when we have that posted on our website, because we have not had that in the past, and I am open for us to do that. I can give a report making sure in the future at a board meeting, once they are up and on SERB, I can let people know where they can find that link and in one of my reports, so we can make sure to have it like in our minutes for people to be able to know where to go.
I just know that it's been a topic, as Eric pointed out, it's been a topic of conversation in the community for some time. So there may be some pent up interest in this, and just in the interest of being helpful and transparent, et cetera, if we can make that easy for folks.
Absolutely.
That would be great.
Great, thank you.
I do want to jump in and say thank you to all the parties involved. I've been here 4 weeks and I've seen how professional our teachers are with our kids and the professionalism that they exhibited. I did not sit in this negotiation, but I've sat in many in prior years, and this is one of the most unique ones I've seen. It wasn't just a percent on the base. It's trying to align it to the STRS standards that have been changed, and having our association open to negotiating with that, and having, as you had stated, Mr. Collier is just an excellent leader in regards to knowing what teachers need and what the community needs and what the district needs. But I just want to commend everybody involved. It is a unique agreement, and just say thank you. So to Garth and Mr. Doherty and Dr. Swetchenow and the LEA leadership, thank you for doing this.
Totally agree with that.
Any questions from other board members concerning the contract?
I just have one comment. If it's not approved today, somebody else is going to have to go back.
I was going to make a comment to thank you guys because I know that it was a lot of time and a labor of love on your side, as well as from our administrative team and the teachers union and everybody else that was involved that I'm forgetting about after a long day of work. But thank you very much. It's truly appreciated to all of you.
And I will just say thank you to all for saying everything that you said, so I don't have to say anything. So, Mr. Dufresne, can we vote on that?
Washburn, and second, Dr. Switchell, Ms. Washburn,
Yes.
Dr. Switchell.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. No, yes.
Yes. Motion carried. And I had actually written down that Mr. Doherty moved and Dr. Swetchenow seconded on that. Is that what you have, Mr. Dufresne? Okay, I just wanted to make sure. So that motion carried. Thank you. Thank you all very much and congratulations. I know we're getting to the motion that Ms. Pettit really likes to make, but if we could just hold off for just a minute, we are doing very well on time. As I mentioned earlier, it would be good. I don't know that we will have to have this other meeting in September, but we do just have the 21st, and that's a regular business meeting, and there's no way that if we have one meeting in September, we can also fit in any time, should there be a need for treasurer interviews, if that comes about. I'm not sure where we are in that process, but also if we could set some time for board governance discussion. So I'm just asking if there is a night that works for everybody. If there isn't, then we won't do it. But I have suggested, in the interest of thinking perhaps about treasurer search, that we put it off until actually after the 21st. So I don't know if anybody's available the 22nd or the 23rd. If not, the week before that, the 13th, the 14th, or the 16th. So if you look at your calendars, if anybody says the same date all at once, we'll pick it. If not, we'll keep thinking about it. 22nd or 23rd. We have a meeting on the 21st.
What does Tuesday, the 14th look like?
Looks like a Tuesday.
Does it look like it's got rosy prospects?
Didn't you say after that?
Well, I just was thinking the longer we waited, the better it would be for the treasurer. But if Tuesday, the 14th looks good, no? Michelle's shaking her
Okay,
head.
Michelle's up next.
Okay,
The 22nd looks good for me.
22nd looks good to Eileen. 22nd, Michelle? It's the day after our business meeting. We like to meet so much that we'd have one right after the other. No? It's a Wednesday, 22nd. Michelle could make that one.
We're on the 22nd,
22nd.
evening of the 22nd.
Evening. I mean, I didn't even look at Saturdays. Dr. Swetchenow had once suggested a Sunday, but I'm not
8 a.m.
even going there.
22nd.
22nd? You're okay on the 22nd. You're okay. You're okay on the 22nd? Eileen's okay on the 22nd. Mr. Broadwater, are you okay on the 22nd?
I'm okay any day.
Mr. Dufresne, are you available on the 22nd?
Yes, sir.
Yes? All right. The 22nd, we will not announce this meeting yet, but at least we have a date that we are hoping to have a special meeting. It would be called for either one or two things, board governance discussion and consideration of a public employee, and that would be treasurer interviews, if that works through CF. All right, so is 6 o'clock on the 22nd okay? All right, it will not be announced till we see what we're doing with the treasurer, but it's there as a placeholder. That was easy.
Yeah.
All right, any other business that needs to come before this board? All right, I need a motion to adjourn.
Oh,
Ms. Pettit moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Dr. Swetchenow seconded. Mr. Giuffre, can we vote on that?
Ms. Pettit? Dr. Swetchinow?
Yes.
Mr. Doherty?
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz?
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn?
Yes.
Motion carried. Meeting is adjourned at 8:10.